Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show today. Today is Sunday, the 21st of July, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot going on. First off, to really understand where Bitcoin is going and where Bitcoin comes from, you have to understand gold. And a lot of people don't understand gold, so, in the first part of the show, I'm going to go into a little bit of an interesting history about gold, and then I'm going to move into why gold is important to Bitcoin, and why Bitcoin is important to gold. So let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here and take a look. Now, first thing I want to take a look at is, this is a site called the Bible Archaeological Site. And Bible history, An awful lot of people are not familiar with the Bible, but the Bible is one of our best history books that we have if you go back into a time back before Christ, It's one of our best history books, and an awful lot of people ignore it, the Bible, but it's got a lot of information in there, and a lot of things that we don't know are in there. And one of the things is a mysterious group called the Nephilim. It says, the Nephilim are the product of the sons of God mingling with the daughters of Adam, the great biblical giants, the fallen ones, the Rephaim, the dead ones, they were called. This description are all that applies to one group of characters found written within the Hebrew Bible. It says, who are the Nephilim? Well, according to the scripture, the Nephilim were the sons of another group that were called the Anunnaki, or they were also known as, in plural, not in the singular, but in plural, the gods. This group, it was said in the scriptures, said that they came down from heaven and had affairs with the sons of men. Affairs meaning that they slept with earth women. And it says in the Bible that they picked, namely, whoever they chose as a wife. And then they would take that person and they would bear an offspring. And these offspring were the ones called the Nephilim, or the Nephilim, in the Bible. Now, the Bible is not the only historical record of the Anunnaki. The ancient peoples that lived in the Persian Gulf region, they used to write on a type of tablet called a cuneiform tablet. And what the cuneiform tablet was a tablet that was made out of clay and baked in an oven. And this is why these tablets lasted so long. Just a second. It looks like a little piece of a cuneiform tablet right here. Let me see there. Okay, there's a little piece of a cuneiform tablet right here. And this writing that's on the piece of I'll focus in on it a little bit closer so we can see it. This is what cuneiform writing looks like, and this is what a piece of a cuneiform tablet looks like. This writing can be deciphered. And they talked in great detail in these cuneiform writings about more than what the Bible had to say, but about these Anunnaki. And quite literally, the translation of Anunnakis, it means the ones who came from the sky, or came from heaven, or came from space. Another word for the sky or heavens is space. So you could translate it as the ones who came from space, came down to the earth, and had affairs with the daughters of men, and they bore sons to them, and those sons were the Nephilim in the Bible. Now, this is all written in the Bible. This is all also written on these cuneiform tablets that they've dug out of the sands of Persia, which is the oldest culture on the earth. This ancient culture. It existed before the Babylonian civilization, before the Egyptian civilization, before the Assyrian civilization. So it's older than the Egyptian civilization. And according to these cuneiform tablets, the main reason why these Anunnakis were here was to mine gold. And they put the people of Earth to work in the mines mining gold. It's this legacy that's left over from these pre-Babylonian times is why when we came to finally to the civilizations of Babylonia, Assyria, Egypt, gold was already set as the most valuable commodity. The money. It was money already by those civilizations, the Babylonian, Assyrian, and Egyptian. So this is the legacy, and there's the reason why it's not lead that's worth a lot. Can you imagine if lead had been the metal that they valued? They would have went out and found all the easily obtainable lead, melted it into bricks, or what you might call gold when they melt it into a bar. They would have melted the lead into bars just like gold bars, put it away in vaults. And because the earth would have been scoured for lead, the lead mining would have been the big mining thing instead of mining gold. But that's not the metal that the Anunnakis wanted. So it's this legacy that was left over from these Anunnakis is the reason why in the early civilizations, plus there's another factor. Gold fits all of the aspects of money. It is fungible, meaning that you can divide gold up into its purity classes: 10 karat, 12 karat, 14 karat, 18 karat, 20 karat, 24 karat, and then it goes by weight per gram. It has a set worth, and this means that the gold on Earth right now is divisible as money because it's, number one, it's perfectly fungible. Number two, it's a perfect store of value. Rust does not touch gold. A moth cannot chew on gold. Insects cannot chew on gold. In fact, even if you lose gold into a saltwater lake, it will not corrode. Gold is a perfect store of value. Put gold away, real gold away, and nothing will happen to it. You can leave it 100 years and come back, and it's just as good and just as beautiful as it was when you put it away. So it's a perfect store of value, and it's also limited in supply. And so it meets all of the qualifications of money, whereas fiat money does not meet these qualifications. Fiat money fails in one huge respect: the fact that it's not limited in supply. And its value is derived from the power of the kingdom that issues it. And so if the power of that kingdom is lost, then so is the value of their currency. So it has inherent weaknesses, fiat currencies. Now, how does all of this fit in with Bitcoin? Well, first off, let's talk a little bit more about these ancient beings, the Anunnakis, and their offspring, which was the Nephilim. Let's talk a little bit more about them. Now, I'm going to bring up something interesting that a lot of people don't know anything about. And one thing I'm going to bring up here is something called cargo cults. This gets very interesting, and I'm going to emphasize on these ancient stories that made their way to the Bible and also in the records of the cuneiform tablets. But now I'm going to switch the subject a little bit, and I'm going to talk about cargo cults. Most people don't know what a cargo cult is, but it's a name given for cults that start and establish themselves basically from people who are, how would I put it, they're not modern, they're not technologically advanced. There's still people on the earth today in many different places who don't have any contact with our modern culture. And they did a whole movie about this, by the way. You know, it was called The Gods Must Be Crazy. It was a really funny movie. It was about some guy. He was a bushman, and he wasn't involved in the modern culture. And so he went out one day, and an airplane flew by. Of course, he didn't see the airplane as an airplane. Of course, the airplane was a bird of the gods, or a chariot of the gods, you know. And somebody threw a pop bottle out of the airplane, and it come falling down and landed on the earth next to him, this glass pop bottle. I'm trying to remember the movie, but this is basically how the movie went. He found the pop bottle, and he found it such a useful item. He could store water in it. He could, it was made out of glass. It was the most wonderful thing. It was an invention of the gods. It came from God in the heavens when they threw down this pop bottle. And all these different things he could use the pop bottle for. He assumed that the gods, for throwing away the empty pop bottle, he assumed that they must be crazy in the movie. And it was a comedy. But it basically giving you an idea about these cargo cults. Basically how these cargo cults work is certain times during war, like back in the 1940s, they would have to go into the jungle someplace where they'd meet these people that were not associated with the modern day. These people were living like, imagine if you were one of these people, living out in the jungle, never seen modern technology, didn't understand how modern man worked, and you live all your life in the jungle. You're almost like you're backwards in time. It's almost like somebody from 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, you know? Suddenly you have contact with modern civilization, and basically you're looking at these people. They come down in a big silver bird, technology that you don't understand. They land and they get out of the aircraft, and you're like, these must be the gods. You don't understand what they're saying because they're speaking in a different language, right? And basically these people bow down to them and believe that they're God. And when these ones leave, what it does is it establishes a religion. Because the people that they landed their airplane, say they make a runway in the jungle, say it's World War II, they make a runway in the jungle, you know, they set up a little building there that houses the radios and everything else, you know. And the people, these bushmen and people who haven't had any contact with modern civilization, look at all of this happening and they're basically astounded. So when they leave, the war's over, they leave, these people start worshiping these ones who they thought were the gods. And it establishes what's called a cargo cult. And it says believers live in the expectation of the return of these ancestors, brought about symbolic substitutes to bring along Western goods. See, oftentimes when they would land, you know, the airplanes, these gods would come down in the silver bird from the heavens, would give these people who lived in the jungle things like chocolate bars and blankets and maybe a pot to cook their meals on and all this stuff, you know. These people would be right impressed with this technology. Okay, so the origin, it says the cult has its roots in the encounters between Malaysians and Europeans. The new wonderful cargo and formerly isolated Malaysian cultures brought it and its response to the partial radical social change through missionary and colonial rule to consider the occurrence was first observed and documented at the end of the 19th century, especially during the Second World War and afterwards. This phenomenon was widely used in New Guinea. So the people in New Guinea, this is what was happening. So let's take a look at this. Here is a cargo cult called the John Frum movement. It's a religious movement on the Pacific island of Tanna, which belongs to the island in the nation of Vanuatu. It is one of the most widely used in the South Pacific cargo cults. Historical background. The John Frum movement originated around 1940 as a counter-movement to Christian missionary activities and was buoyed by the deployment of American soldiers who were regarded as emissaries of John Frum. See, they believed that John Frum was God. Going back to the origins of this cult, I believe how it actually originated. Now, okay, maybe I'm just theorizing about how it originated, but I can just imagine them coming down in World War II, making a landing strip in the middle of the jungle, you know, American soldiers building a tower, a little tower out of wood probably, and putting a radio inside there and everything else. Meanwhile, these people that live in the jungle were watching everything very carefully. The silver bird would come down from the heavens containing God. So the silver bird probably landed. The soldiers came out, and the New Guinea people that lived in the jungle were standing there, maybe a 40-year-old, I'm just theorizing, maybe a 40-year-old New Guinea man, he was there, and he lived in the jungle all his life, and the big door opened up on the side of the silver bird, and down stepped this soldier, and big smile on the soldier's face, and he started handing out chocolate bars. So the Indian probably, not Indian, sorry, the native to New Guinea, that's by the name Indian, by the way, is a misnomer, because when they first came over to the America, they thought they had went to India because they were trying to establish spice routes and stuff, And the thing was they called them Indians. They're not from India. It's all a misnomer, actually, going back. They're actually natives to that region. So the native was probably standing there, giving him chocolate bars, big smile on his face, and the native probably said something to this guy, this soldier, and he probably said something like back, like, "I'm John from Saskatchewan." So the native probably looked up at him and probably said, "John from Saskatchewan, John Frum." And that was probably the end of that. He probably went off and ate his chocolate bar. So he probably went back to his tribe that night, living in the jungle, and he probably told his wife, I met God. His name was John from John Frum. And that's how it all got started. Because he probably had children, and he brought his children up in the way of worshiping John from wherever, and his children brought their children up, and it was always a legend of the great John from wherever, John from the heavens. He came from heaven down to the earth, in the silver bird. You know what I mean? And so this is how this whole religion. So where's this religion gone now? Well, now it's growing. It's growing bigger and bigger. It says the cult has about 1,000 followers on the island in the south of Vanuatu. This John Frum movement. So there's thousands of people worshiping this religion. And it's only had time to grow from the 1940s until now. Now, this is a very interesting phenomenon, this cargo cult phenomenon. And it would be very easy for somebody to say, well, they could apply it to ancient history and say, well, it would be very easy for them to say, well, maybe all of our religions today are versions of a cargo cult, from ancient times. And, I mean, I can't rule that out, but then again, that's not where I'm going with this. Where I'm actually going with this is how this applies to gold. Because what do we know are the actual facts? The facts are written on these clay tablets that come out of the sand of Mesopotamia that are older than anything. In fact, if they had been written on papyrus, if you guys don't know what papyrus is, it's the earliest form of paper. It's where we got our word paper from. What they used to do is take reeds out of the River Nile, beat them down in layers, and dry them in the sun. And it made a writing material. If these tablets had been written on papyrus, they would have long since disappeared. But because they were written on clay, they lasted. Now, what did these tablets say? They said about the ones who came from heavens to earth and had affairs with the daughters of men, and how they wanted gold. This is what these tablets say, quite literally. And this is also what it's talked about in the Bible when it says about the Nephilim, the sons of God. They were the sons of God. Now, who was God, or the gods, were the fathers who came down from the heavens and had relations with the daughters of men, according to the Bible. Now, the Bible doesn't make a lot of reference to this, but it is there. It's very specific. The clay tablets make more reference to these beings in a much more elaborate way and explain that what they were really here for was gold. This is the legacy that's left on for us, coming down to our day. Now, coming down to our day, there's really only one thing. If you go back before Bitcoin, there's really only one thing that supports the entire world's financial system. Picture in your mind a pyramid, and picture the pyramid upside down. The capstone of the pyramid, which was what was known as the capstone of a pyramid in ancient times, in the Egyptian times, was known as the benben. But it was also known as the Eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye of God. And it was also known as the chief cornerstone. This was called the chief cornerstone. That's the part of the pyramid that's called the chief cornerstone. So, this particular capstone on the pyramid, it was made out of gold. There's reason to believe that some of the pyramids had capstones. Now, the capstones have been all removed off the pyramids, but some of the pyramids had capstones that were made out of gold. Pure gold. I'll give you a little bit of an interesting story about the ancient times. And I did a lot of study into the Anunnaki and the ancient history of gold. And one of the things is the mines of the Anunnakis. In their mining operations, and they still have these, by the way, they didn't smelt the gold down into bars. That's not what they did. They would mine it out of the ground, the ancient people of the earth, and they always said they were mining it for the gods. And they had mined it into a very specific shape. And in the museums, they still have some of these ingots of pure gold. The Anunnakis would form the gold into a very interesting shape. Or the people who were working for the Anunnakis, the miners, when they finally would melt the gold down, they'd melt it into a very interesting shape. They would melt it into the shape of a spool. Rather large spool. With a hole in the middle, this big around, and about that long. You know? I studied that for a long time, and I found it very interesting, the spool shape that they would mine and they would smelt the gold into instead of a bar. And I was wondering to myself, well, what reason, why would they want to make it in the shape of a spool? And I came up with something. I thought about it for a long time, and I came up with something. It suddenly dawned on me. The reason why they were melting it into the shape of a spool rather than a bar was for transport. Think about it real carefully. Gold is heavy. If you were putting gold on board a transport, some sort of transport, you get a lot of jostling. Right? Why they were making it in the shape of a spool is you could have a steel rod inside your transport vehicle. Whatever type of transport vehicle you have, doesn't matter whether it's would be a truck or a bus or a train or maybe a rocket ship or whatever. It doesn't matter how you transport it. Just think how easy it would be to transport it if you had a steel rod and you could just slide that spool down over the steel rod and put a locking mechanism in place on the top. Snap. Now, what about our gold bars we have today? You know, if we're going to transport them someplace, like say we put them into an airplane, we got to secure them. You got to secure them. You don't want gold bars flying out and going out through the side of the airplane, because gold's heavy. It's like a chunk of lead, you know. Maybe it'd be a smart idea for us today if we started to smelt our gold bars into spool shape rather than into bar shape. You know? Rather than make it into a loaf shape, maybe we should make it into spool shapes. That way we can transport it easier. But wouldn't a better way of transporting gold from one place to another quickly would be just to send it over the internet? Wouldn't that be better? Well, guess what, folks? Bitcoin is digital gold. It was originally designed to be digital gold. This is why they use a gold coin as a symbol for Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is the way gold can be transferred instantaneously over the internet. Because gold is perfectly divisible, because gold is perfectly fungible, you don't need to have a hard peg. You got a lot of coins coming out there, you know, who are saying that they're pegged to gold, and they got a hard peg to gold. There's coins out there. They've come up, about every 6 months they come up with a new coin that's supposed to be pegged to gold, or a new cryptocurrency pegged to gold. They never go anywhere. Because a hard peg to gold is not as good as a loose peg to gold. And Bitcoin has a loose peg to gold. Doesn't matter how high in price Bitcoin goes, or how low the spot price of gold stays. If you were a guy living, say, in Russia right now, and another guy lives, say, in Brazil, and the guy in Brazil has Bitcoin, and the guy in Russia has gold, right? You don't have to transfer the physical gold. The Bitcoin is worth the gold. If you want the guy in Russia to have gold, will you just send him the Bitcoin? He can go out and buy gold with it. Gold that's in Russia. And vice versa. The guy in Russia could send the guy in Brazil Bitcoin, and the guy in Brazil could go out and buy gold with the Bitcoin gold that exists in Brazil. There's gold in every country on earth. And Bitcoin represents the value of the gold that's in every country on earth. So you don't have to send the gold across the internet. You can send the Bitcoin across the internet. And that's why Bitcoin has a gold-colored coin symbolizing it. That's why you mine it, just like you mine gold. Everything is related to gold. Bitcoin is digital gold. And its legacy is everything to connected to the origins of gold and how come gold is valuable today. So what we're noticing here is gold and Bitcoin at a certain point in time are going to be the only, except with the exception of silver. Okay, gold, silver, and Bitcoin. And I mean a few of the other altcoins might go along with Bitcoin, like Litecoin and a few others, you know, that make it. An awful lot of these altcoins are going to die, you know. So the only thing of value in the future, you move 5-10 years into our future, the fiat currencies are going to die rather suddenly. It's going to be a swift death. It's slow at first. I know it's taken 100 years for the value of fiat currency to drop by like 97% over the last 100 years. I'm talking about the United States fiat, the USA dollar. It's dropped in value like 97%. It's only got like 3% left. And it seems like it's taken forever to drop in value. But when it finally starts to go and the confidence is lost, then it's going to go really fast, folks. You know, so looking into our future 5-10 years down the line, there's going to be no value in the fiat currencies anymore. They're going to be gone. They're going to disappear. They're just basically going to disappear. Just like the Confederate currency when the United States went into the Civil War. That currency just disappeared and become totally worthless. Same thing is going to happen to fiat, folks. It's going to disappear. It's going to be gone. What is going to have value is gold, silver, Bitcoin, and a few altcoins. And land. Land always have value because they're not making any more. If you haven't noticed, that's whatever land we got now, that's it. It's limited in supply. So, gold, silver, bitcoins, a few other altcoins, land, and things of value like factories and your labor as worth. This is what's going to be entering into this new paradigm in the world, a paradigm shift for all of us, where the old things that had value, that have value right now, everybody, if you go ask them, how much is your home worth, they always say dollars. It's worth so many dollars. That ain't going to be there anymore. That's going. In the future, you're going to ask them how much is their home worth, and they're going to say 0.01 or whatever, or 0.1%, 1% of a Bitcoin or whatever. They'll say that's how much my home is worth. And they might even be able to convert that into how much gold that's worth as well. So your house is worth, instead of saying dollars, they might say, well, my house is worth 3 ounces of gold. This is the kind of future we're moving toward. Now, I talk about these different values, and I'm standing on this side of this paradigm trying to figure out what it's going to be worth. Maybe it'll be worth more. Maybe your house will be worth a half a Bitcoin. I don't know for sure. And maybe your house will be worth 50 ounces of gold or something like that. I don't know for sure. But I know one thing. When all of the fiat money is gone, and you have to convert your net worth of everything over into gold, silver, and Bitcoins, or Bitcoins and Litecoins or whatever, all of that values transferred, it's going to be an awful lot less Bitcoin and gold and silver than it is now. In other words, right now, it takes a lot of gold to be worth the price of your home. Well, the average median home in the United States right now is like $250,000. Okay, how much gold could you buy for that? Well, 200 ounces. Or 180 ounces or something like that. So you say, what's your house worth in gold right now? You say like 180 ounces. I can tell you right now that after this value transfer completes, that it's not going to be 180 ounces anymore. It might be something like 5 ounces or 10 ounces. So your house is going to be worth a heck of a lot less gold than it is right now. And the same thing applies to Bitcoin. Right now, what is your house worth? Well, Bitcoins are a little bit more than $10,000. So if your house is worth $250,000, that would be 25 Bitcoins, roughly. So your house right now is worth 25 Bitcoins. I can see in a day coming in the future when your house is not even worth 1 Bitcoin. So this is where we're going. This is where we're headed. To understand where we're headed, you have to understand our past and why gold has value. And this is what the texts that exist, the cuneiform tablets, the Bible, this is what they say our history was and why gold has value. You could ignore what they say in the past and say, well, those people didn't know what the heck they were talking about. Okay? Or you can believe it. It's up to you. But they said what they said. It's in the Bible about the Nephilim. It's also written on these clay cuneiform tablets very explicitly. So you can believe it or not. It's entirely up to you. We live in a world today where we're supposedly free. So because of that, it's up to you whether you want to believe these things or not. But it is written. It is written by our ancestors, and it's up to us whether we want to believe it or not. Listen, thank you guys for listening to this show, and we'll catch you again very, very soon. Bye-bye, guys.